Hello, Internet. Hello, Sam, and welcome back to After Campfire. And this is, I don't know, something about this feels like kind of weird to me because this is like, in a way, the first normal After Campfire I've done since I've gotten home. Since like I made an After Campfire with you, then I made one like in Florida, and then I made one with like Amanda and Justin. But now I'm just like in my apartment, living my life. And yeah, it's kind of nice to be back to some regular life. Speaking of which, Henry's Diary of How to Adult. I have now worked for Amazon for 2 weeks, which has been very interesting. Just mostly because, like, it's very hard to start a job like this remotely when I'm not 100% certain on what I need to do. So, and everyone else is like super busy and kind of just like, check that wiki and figure it out. And then I'm just like, but what am I even trying to figure out? It's very weird. Like, the last 2 days, I felt like it's been going better, but like, it's been a very weird start. And I know, like, I bet if this was in person, it would have been a lot better, but like, oh man, it is real weird and difficult to start a job like this. But something that's kind of different that you can't see yet is I find it funny that you were just asking me and then yourself about like furniture preferences when weirdly enough people don't get new furniture that often. But I just did because new job, meaning I have to do work at home led to me being like, yo, I need a new desk. And then in addition to that, I have a fun new setup. Oh, Jesus. A fun new setup. So for now, oopsies, you can see my computer over there. Why is it to the side, you see? Because we have a new L-shaped desk and I got 2 extra monitors for work because, hey, man, if I'm going to be a software engineer, I got to be like the super cool, like, I'm on all the TV and on all the screens and doing all the programming. And it's going to work very well for your question because your question involved having like a 3-part answer. So I'm going to devote one screen to every answer because that's my setup now. Also, Sam, how dare you say my last question, which was about what is something you've created for camp, was bad? That led to you talking about your horde, which was hilarious, which that picture that you showed didn't do justice how big that crowd was. I was pulling lines for a class while this horde was forming behind me, and I'm like, I don't know what to do about this. I just like kept talking to you guys and I like really wanted evidence of it, so I took a picture of it really quickly, mid pulling lines for a class, like between two kids and like between moving the lines around. I took a picture. Like that wasn't the end of it. And then they all approached me, and it was really weird. And then they all ran away, which was more surprising. Anyways, it was strange. And you talked about the Church of the Octagonal Crust. How is that? You're like, man, I wish you asked better questions that led to like more interesting discussion. You talked about 2 of the coolest things you've ever done for camp. I don't know what you want, Sam. Rude. Also, side note, your pillow setup is fine. I don't really remember what I talked about, but like, I feel like an even amount of normal pillows plus like a side pillow like you have, totally fine. I just find like 3 or 1 to be a little weird because like 1 is like that's not enough. What if you need some adjustment? 3, weird and odd. Body pillow, side pillow thing, perfect, great. I used to do that in college. I had 5 then, like you do. Whatever. I feel like there was something from your video I wanted to remember. Mostly this, it was rude. My question was good and you had good conversation based off of it. And that makes me sad. But I find answering that own question, like what's something you've created for camp, to be a lot more difficult for me to answer because Sam, like, you're in a position where you're able to add much more to camp in a way that I can't really. And I don't really know what some good answers are. Like, if I'm talking about like one of like the favorite things I did of all time, like a few like weird things come to mind. Like since I'm talking about little creation, makes me think of hey when I was a camper and did woodshop all the time and I built stuff. The Iron Man suit I made for Color Wars in '08 was like one of the weirdest things I did. Like there's like what I actually ended up building was so stupid. but like I actually had a much deeper plan in mind, but I just didn't get access to enough table saw time because I wasn't allowed to use it, and only like Kip or whoever was running it that year was. And he's like, I can't just keep cutting things for you. So I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make it boxy and see what I can do. So that was hilarious, like a weird thing I did, and I really wish I still had the head for the Iron Man suit. Thanks, Jason. Broke it. Um, but yeah, another thing I feel like, since you mentioned like an overall thing and a this year thing, like I feel like adding the flying trapeze aspect of the circus show, like creating that this summer, I think was super cool. Like I know, like especially in the second show went on too long, but it just felt so exciting to do that, and it was cool to have a circus show and the trapeze back up because it's still up because we had less people around, and it just worked out really well. And like even moving the entire audience was like super simple. Like I almost feel like we should do that all the time. And whatever Kimmy wants to do, she can do. But I really loved having flying trapeze in the show, and yeah, even though like yeah, it was too long, like. I it would have been nice if I had enough time to like think through what like flying trapeze teams and such would have been like. I don't know. It would have been cool. Anyways, Sam, your question to me was like kind of like a mix of kinds of questions we've had before, but you asked so many at the same time, which is like, who's like a comic book character, an anime character, and a movie character you like really relate to, which for like anime characters, like you joked about like me being the generic protagonist, like it's very easy for me to find ones for that. But for like movie characters and comic characters, it's a lot more difficult because comics, I'm just gonna say, is not manga, just like American comics. I don't read that many comics, so from in my brain, I just said I'm just gonna count the MCU in that to make it a lot easier for me. And then for movies, it's hard because most of the movies I watch are just MCU movies, so it's just comic movies again. But I think I came up with a decent answer. So first one, Simone the Digger. Doop. So Simone, like, as far as like normal anime protagonists goes, like he really embodies so much of like how I've grown up and had to deal with like struggles with like, am I worthy of the like positions I've been put into? Like, can I really do it? Like how he gets over loss and grief, like things like that. Like I just really connect to, and I just really love Simone. Even though I really like all of his story in part one better, because part two is just weird. Part one is so much better in Gurren Lagann. Anyways, number two, Spider-Man. As far as comics go, I don't really know enough about like which characters I would best connect to, but I kind of feel like Spider-Man is probably the answer, not just because he has powers that I just would absolutely love to have. I feel like it's just a very, again, like the generic anime protagonist kind of issues of like he is the kind of character where like a lot of his arcs, including like in the movies, in any comics I have seen, and like the PS4 video game, which is so good. A lot of his arcs are about like how he's kind of messed up and has to deal with it, and like growing up and struggling with that. And I don't know, I just have felt like that was a cool one. And most of these characters so far have been about like kind of how I've like struggled growing up, but this one's about kind of when I've been older. This is Ricky Gervais from The Invention of Lying, which, if you haven't seen it, is a movie about a universe where no one can lie, flatter, anything of that sense. Everything they say is like the bluntest thing you can imagine. Like if you see someone and you're like, oh, they look ugly, like while you're crossing the street, you literally like have to say it because that's just like how their universe works. And this clip, speaking of which, it's like hard to find like an HD clip of the video, so it's like a YouTube video that I'm showing right now, is when he figured out how to lie, which was he was like so desperate for money, and then like they accidentally like read the wrong number in his account, and then he's like, oh yeah, it is that much money. Like it was like triple as much money or 10 times as much money as it should have been. And the banker's like, oh, okay, like it must have been a mistake. And then she just gives him the money, and he's like, oh my god, I have all this power. And a lot of what this movie is about is like when is it right to be honest with people and when it is right to lie, like good lies and bad lies. Like he accidentally creates religion, and it has a lot to say about that, which I am very much in line with, and I just very much feel for that kind of story and that kind of perspective on the world. Or commentary is the word I meant to say before, but yeah, I don't know if it's a perfect fit, but seems like a good one. Um, Anyways, just because right now it is October 2020, crazy stuff is happening right now. So for the sake of being a time capsule of these videos and for the sake of like discussion, I should probably bring up the fact the first presidential debate was this week and it was a fucking catastrophe. And then fucking Trump got tested positive for coronavirus and is in the hospital right now. We don't know how bad it actually is, because if it was good or bad, it doesn't matter. His people would always say that he's just fine. It's great. He's a fireman, and he's... Oh my god. Sam, if you had to lead the next presidential debate, how would you act as the moderator? Do you feel like you would be up to the job? And if not, who would you try to get? What would the rules be? What would you do when no one follows the rules? Tell me about your debate. I know you do debates, so your answer is probably going to make a lot more sense than mine. I mean, like, teach kids to debate and stuff. But I would love to hear your answers, because I'm pretty sure debates with children run a lot better than that. Catastrophe. See you later.